Welcome to Zoya Farouk channel. Title: The Last Bench. In the back corner of room 7B, beside a dusty window and a squeaky fan, sat the school's most unnoticed student, Aarav. Every year, every teacher, every student knew him only as the boy on the last bench. He never raised his hand. He never made a sound. His books were clean but untouched. He was always on time, always present, but never really there. To most, he was invisible. But not to Miss Tara, the new English teacher. She had joined the school only 2 weeks ago. Young, energetic, and full of ideas, she saw teaching as more than a job. She believed every student was a story waiting. One day, while checking class assignments, she noticed Aarav hadn't written a single word. She walked to the last bench, smiled gently, and asked, "Why didn't you write the story, Aarav?" He looked up, surprised that someone had said his name. "I don't have stories," he said quietly. Miss Tara didn't argue. She simply said, "Then write about that. About having no stories." The next day, to her surprise, Aarav submitted a page titled, "The Boy with No Voice." It was raw, simple, but powerful. It spoke of a boy who never spoke, not because he didn't want to, but because no one had ever waited long enough to listen. He had dreams, ideas, fears, but they remained locked behind silence. Miss Tara read it 3 times. At the end of the day, she pinned the story on the classboard. The next morning, the entire class stood around it, whispering, "Who wrote this? This is good. Was this from a book?" Aarav watched from his bench, confused and a little nervous. Miss Tara entered with her usual smile. "It's by someone you all know," she said. "Someone who's been here the whole time." All eyes turned to Aarav. For the first time, he wasn't invisible. He was seen. From that day on, things began to change. Miss Tara encouraged Aarav to write more. Stories, poems, diary entries, he wrote them all. She even started a weekly class segment called Story Spot, where students could read their work aloud. Aarav never read his out loud, but others did. And every time his words were spoken, they echoed in ways he never imagined. One afternoon, the principal walked into the class and asked to speak with Aarav. "You've been selected for the inter-school writing competition," he said. "Your teacher sent your work without telling you. Congratulations." Aarav stood frozen. A year ago, he wouldn't have dared to write his name clearly. Now, his words were traveling further than he ever had. The night before the competition, he sat with his parents, reading his story out loud for the first time. His mother wiped her tears. His father said, "I never knew you had all this inside." He smiled and replied, "Neither did I." At the competition, Aarav stood on a large stage. 100 faces stared back. Microphone in front, spotlight above. He took a deep breath. Then he began. Once there was a boy who sat on the last bench. Not because he liked it, but because it was easier to hide there. He believed he had nothing to say. Until someone said, "Then write about that." And suddenly, silence became a story. When he finished, there was silence, then loud, long applause. He didn't win first place. But he won something far greater. 5 years later, Aarav returned to his school, not as a student, but as a guest speaker. He stood in front of a new class, in the same room 7B. He looked at the last bench. It was empty. He smiled and began his speech. Sometimes the quietest voice has the loudest story. Sometimes the last bench hides the first dream. And sometimes, all it takes, is one person to listen. Moral of the story: everyone has a voice, a story, a dream. Sometimes, it's just waiting for someone to believe in it. Thanks for watching.